My name is Stephanie. I've been married to my husband, Chris, for 7 years, and we have a young daughter, Lily, who is in elementary school. I never thought I'd find it possible to love someone so much, but becoming a mother made me realize how true that is. However, when we found out our first child was a girl, Chris's mother, Margaret, immediately started pressuring us to have another. Apparently, having a daughter wasn't good enough. But considering Chris's family are all office workers with nothing to inherit, I didn't think it was necessary to be pushed so hard about having a son.
Why aren't you having a second child?
Every time we visited Margaret, she would nag us. We're just leaving it up to God's will.
Leaving it to God won't work. You have to have a boy, no matter what.
Okay, despite what she said, Chris wasn't very cooperative about having another child after Lily was born.
Just ignore Mom. She'll give up eventually.
About 2 years after our marriage, the topic of moving in with Margaret came up, and I reluctantly agreed to live with her, even though she didn't show much affection for her granddaughter, Lily. As expected, she started blaming me every day about the children.
Still not pregnant this month? You really are a terrible wife. Why can't you have another child? You must not want one, do you?
I couldn't possibly tell her that Chris was uncooperative. I was getting thoroughly fed up with being the only one blamed every day. Just then, Margaret said something outrageous.
Chris is going to remarry Nancy.
What? Remarry Nancy? Who is that?
Haven't you heard from Chris?
No.
She's Chris's lover.
What? I looked at Chris, who was busy playing a game on his phone, not paying any attention to our conversation. I looked back at Margaret. Is she losing her mind? As I stood there, confused, Margaret yelled at me.
So hurry up and get out of here.
Well, Margaret, Chris hasn't said anything about this. How can you tell me to leave? Angry, Margaret called Chris over and forced him into the conversation. No matter what she says, it doesn't matter, because there's no way Chris is cheating on me.
Oh, you mean about Nancy? Yeah, I'm divorcing you to marry her.
What? What do you mean?
It means exactly what it sounds like. Move out quickly. My new wife is coming.
Chris, explain this to me.
Mom already told you. My new wife is coming.
So, you've been cheating on me?
It's not cheating.
That's right. It's serious.
Serious? When did you get involved with someone else? That's a betrayal.
It's not his fault. You didn't want to have another child.
So you're saying you had an affair because I didn't have another child? And you knew about this, Margaret?
Of course. That's why I kept telling you to have a boy. But you kept saying you'd let nature take its course and didn't try at all. So this is what happens.
Here, sign the divorce papers and submit them.
Chris pulled out the divorce papers from a drawer, placed them on the table, and went back to looking at his phone. This is such an important conversation, and you're playing a game on your phone.
It's not a big deal. You're overreacting. It's just about signing the divorce papers.
I can't believe this. Margaret keeps talking about having a child, but you never even tried. If having a son is so important, it's impossible when you're not cooperative.
Oh, so now you're blaming Chris. It's your fault.
How is this my fault?
If a husband doesn't want to have a child, it's the wife's fault. That's just how it is.
What? That makes no sense.
That's why I was against this marriage. You were too old. When you said you wanted to get married, you were already 28. I was worried you wouldn't be able to have kids. And look, I was right.
But we had Lily.
That's not good enough. Girls will just get married and leave the family. They're useless, you know?
Children aren't born to be useful.
How impertinent. I don't like you because you're too old and cheeky.
This is terrible. I've always listened to you. I never caused any trouble to keep our home peaceful.
You know, that's exactly why you're boring.
What? Boring.
Yeah, you just go along with whatever I say without complaining, no matter what. That's boring. Unlike you, Nancy has her own opinions. I like that about her.
This is unbelievable. I agreed to live with Margaret and never argued with her, all for Chris's sake. And now he says I'm boring.
And besides, there's no way you'll have a boy at your age. I don't expect anything from you anymore. You're already 35. No matter how hard you try, it's impossible. Chris would prefer a younger woman anyway.
Margaret said it in a mocking tone. And then I remembered. Since getting married, I have always been mocked like this and endured Margaret's harsh words. I was compared to the neighbor's daughters-in-law and called a bad wife, and I was criticized for my cooking. When Lily made noise, I was scolded.
All you do is age, and yet you can't even educate a child.
Even when I sought help from Chris, he never supported me. What were those 7 years of endurance for? And now Chris is having an affair. How long have you been cheating on me? Where did you meet Nancy?
How long? Well, it's been a little over a year after we got married.
What? 6 years ago. That was around the time I gave birth.
Yeah, you know, like Mom said, younger women are just better.
How low can he go? Where did you meet her?
Oh, Mom introduced us.
What? Margaret introduced you.
Yes, she was working at a place we often go to, and I thought she would be perfect for Chris, so I approached her.
Does she know you're married?
Yes, she knows. She said she doesn't mind as long as I get a divorce.
She knew and still had an affair with you. How old is she?
Why are you so interested? You already lost, so it doesn't matter.
No, my husband was taken from me. I have the right to know, don't I?
Fine. She's 30.
She's 10 years younger than you.
That's why she'll probably have a healthy baby.
So, Margaret, you encouraged this affair just to have a baby?
Oh, once she has the baby, they can live as a family. I never thought it would end with just having the baby. That's why I'm telling you to leave since you can't have one.
This is too much.
Nancy wants to get married too, so all that's left is for you to leave. Now, if you understand, sign the divorce papers.
Margaret pointed at the divorce papers, urging me to sign them quickly. At that moment, I caught a glimpse of Lily, who had an anxious expression on her face. She was standing at the entrance of the room, watching us intently. Lily is watching.
What?
We shouldn't have this conversation in front of Lily. Let's discuss it another day.
Oh, it's fine. It saves us the trouble of explaining later. Besides, once you're divorced, she'll have to understand her parents' divorce anyway.
But this will hurt Lily.
She'll be fine. This kind of thing happens in every family. Divorce is normal nowadays.
I stared at Chris in disbelief. How can he say that? He doesn't care about Lily at all. I started to feel foolish for being so attached to staying with these people. Then a part of me decided I should just sign the papers and end it. So I picked up the pen and signed the divorce papers. All right, I signed it. Is this what you wanted? I tossed the pen aside, and Margaret took the divorce papers and scrutinized them.
Yes, this is perfect. Now, get out.
What?
It's ridiculous to stay in the same house after a divorce. Nancy won't want that either. So, get out.
But leaving immediately is a bit.
Well, I'd prefer you to leave as soon as possible.
I have Lily, so it's not that simple.
By signing the divorce papers, I thought you understood what that meant. Clearly, you weren't prepared at all.
Then leave within a week. Is that okay, Mom?
I suppose so.
As soon as I signed the papers, they acted as if the past 7 years hadn't happened at all. Feeling a chill, I took Lily's hand and went to the bedroom. Coming to himself, Chris left the house, possibly to go to Nancy. Margaret followed shortly after, maybe to meet some friends, as I heard the front door open and close. In the suddenly silent house, the only sound was the motor of the refrigerator, which felt particularly cold. Lily clung to me, crying, "It's okay. There's nothing to worry about. I'm not going to let it end like this. Yes, we'll start everything anew from here." I reassured myself, then picked up my phone and made a call. Within a week, I had finished packing and arranged for a moving truck. The hallway was piled high with boxes. Seeing this, Chris and Margaret couldn't hide their delight.
Finally leaving.
Took you long enough.
That's a lot of boxes.
You're not planning to take the appliances, are you?
Can't you see? None of the appliances are missing.
My goodness, I hate that tone of yours. I can see that, but I wanted to be sure.
With Lily's stuff, it amounts to this much. It just shows how much money I've spent on them all this time.
What a waste.
Absolutely. We've wasted money on those who were of no use.
You didn't forget anything, did you? Even if you did, don't expect us to send it to you.
I'm fine.
Good. This house will feel so much bigger now. It was suffocating before, so this is refreshing.
While the truck was being loaded, the two of them sat on the living room sofa, with Margaret turning on the TV. Chris, without any remorse about parting with Lily, continued playing a game on his phone. What kind of people are they? Even though it's a sad farewell with Lily, they're determined to remain cold to the very end. Any pain in my heart was completely gone because of them. Thinking that this is the end and a new beginning, I actually felt relieved. Lily, holding her stuffed animal, watched intently as I gave instructions to the movers. Her face still showed anxiety, with tears welling up in her eyes. "Don't worry, there's nothing to be afraid of." I patted Lily's head, trying to reassure her. Once everything was loaded onto the truck, Chris and Margaret came to the entrance.
Is it done?
"Yes, it's done."
Oh, finally leaving. Now we can call Nancy.
"Yes, finally. Thank you for everything."
Yes, yes. Just hurry up and leave.
Given everything that's happened, can we say our goodbyes at the truck?
What? Why do we have to do that?
We've been a family for 7 years. I think it's the least we can do. This is our final goodbye.
You're so stubborn about strange things. We just want you gone.
Yes, and that's why I'm asking you to come to the truck. I have no sentimentality about this.
Mom, it's fine. This is the end of things anyway.
Oh, really? Well, if Chris says so, I suppose.
Margaret said this, then slipped on the sandals by the entrance and went outside. Chris followed, putting on the remaining sandal, and stepped outside. I took Lily's hand and led her out the front door, giving a firm nod to the movers. Then he was prompted by the movers.
Chris, please get in the truck.
What? Why should I get in the truck?
It's fine, Margaret. You should get in too.
Wait a minute. Why should I get in?
There's a reason. You'll understand once you're inside.
Hey, wait. No, what are you doing?
The movers guided the reluctant pair into the truck. Although they resisted, they knew making a scene would draw the neighbors' attention. Concerned about appearances, they couldn't cause a scene, so they let themselves be pushed into the truck.
Chris, what's going on?
I don't know. But if we make a fuss now, it'll just look bad. Let's get in for now and figure it out later.
You're right.
Well, I hope you'd be able to make it back, I said as I closed the truck door and made Lily wave her hand. The movers greeted us and started the engine, driving the truck away. Lily looked puzzled as she watched the truck drive off, but I smiled at her. How about a snack? I called out to Lily and led her back inside. I placed the snacks I had bought to calm Lily on the table. It was a small cake, quite out of place given the situation. Let's eat. As we ate the cake, I explained to Lily that her father and grandmother had moved out. Little Lily must have thought she was the one leaving this house. She was surprised by the sudden turn of events, but I reassured her that everything was going to be okay. Soon, Lily's smile returned. Apparently, she didn't feel sad about Chris's arrogance or Margaret's coldness disappearing from her life. Even as a child, she could tell who was in the wrong. About an hour later, just as I expected, Chris called.
Hey, what the hell is going on?
Oh, have you arrived?
Yeah, we have. But this is Nancy's apartment.
That's right. You said you wanted to live with her, so I sent you there. You should be thanking me.
Thank you? How did you even find out where she lives?
It was simple. I hired a detective. It wasn't hard to find out.
A detective?
Yes, I needed the address to send both of you away.
You were the one who was supposed to leave.
I never said we were leaving. Starting today, you can live there with her. Isn't it great? You get to be with her so soon.
What? Are you kidding me?
I'm not kidding. I'm very serious.
Why would you do this? My home is there.
Yeah, that's our home. How dare you do this?
It sounded like Margaret was on speakerphone, and her voice was grating to my ears. No, you seem to be mistaken. This house is mine.
Don't be ridiculous.
The ridiculous one here is you, Margaret. Introducing Nancy to Chris and encouraging the affair? How could you do something so stupid?
That's not the point right now. I told you to leave when we got divorced. So, obviously, you're the one who has to go.
Were you not told anything?
Told what?
Margaret, where are you yelling from? You're disturbing the neighbors.
Shut up. The movers unloaded everything and left a pile of boxes in front of the apartment. If you don't want your stuff to get wet from the night dew, you'd better come quickly.
It won't make any difference if I come because all those boxes contain your belongings.
What? That can't be true.
Margaret continued to shout hysterically. Margaret, you're embarrassing yourself. You're moving there, and the neighbors will think a crazy old lady has moved in.
Who are you calling crazy?
Anyway, please start living there from today. We're no longer related.
No, we're coming back. We'll kick you out of that house.
You can't do that. If you enter without permission, I'll sue you for trespassing.
You insane woman. You're the one who's crazy.
If you ask Chris, he can explain it. Why don't you try that?
Ask what?
Who owns this house?
Isn't it obvious? Chris bought that house after he got married. It wasn't a new house, but it was still very nice. That's why I moved in.
Oh my, what a big lie you've been told. But it's not surprising given that he's someone who can lie so easily enough to have an affair.
What do you mean?
The truth is, this house was built by my parents before I got married. After they passed away, I lived here alone. When we got married, I didn't want to leave the house full of memories, so Chris said we could live here. A while after we got married, when you said you wanted to move in, Margaret, since it was a big house, I thought it would be fine.
That's a lie. Chris said he bought the house, even if it was used. That's why we moved in together.
Margaret, think about it. How could Chris afford a house this big on his salary? And we moved in right after the wedding. He barely had enough money to pay for the wedding.
That's impossible.
That's why this house is mine. You have no claim to it, not even a little bit. Why don't you ask Chris?
Chris, what is she talking about?
I could hear Margaret's trembling voice on the other end of the line. But Chris, as usual, seemed to be pretending not to hear, likely engrossed in his game.
Chris, stop playing your game and answer.
When things get inconvenient, Chris suddenly can't hear. I guess he's really in a tough spot now since his lies are coming out.
Chris, say something. Are you just going to let Stephanie mock you?
Fine.
I heard Chris's small voice, and then he seemed to take over the call, starting to defend himself instead of Margaret.
Sure, it was your parents' house, but I live there now, so it's mine.
That sounded like a child's argument. You were able to live there because we were married. That's why I allowed it. The same goes for Margaret.
Well, yeah, but
Claiming you bought it is a lie. Even if you say that, it doesn't make it yours. The house is entirely in my name.
when you get divorced, aren't the assets split in half?
Right. But we never discussed this before. Also, this house was inherited by me before we got married. Even if it was inherited after, it was still my inheritance. That means it's not a marital asset. Too bad. So there's no need to split it.
No way.
If you don't believe me, check for yourself. I'm just telling you what my lawyer said.
Seriously?
Hearing Chris's words, Margaret, thinking she might lose, jumped back into the conversation.
But there are appliances and furniture that need to be divided.
Generally, that's true. But in our case, all the appliances and furniture were used by my parents. Of course, there are a few things we've replaced, like the $30 toaster. Would you like it? I could give you $15. Or would you rather give me $15 and take the old, worn-out toaster?
I don't want it.
Oh, by the way, the junk Chris brought when we got married is packed in boxes. And all your stuff is packed too, Margaret. Honestly, most of it should have been thrown away. But since you two value your belongings so much, I didn't want to throw anything out and have you complain. So I packed everything up for you. Don't worry.
Thank you, I guess.
The moving costs were ridiculous because of that. It ended up being quite expensive. But since all the appliances are mine, at least I didn't have to pay for moving those.
That's why the bill from the movers was so high.
It was pricey, wasn't it? I was shocked when I saw the estimate. But since it wasn't my money, I didn't care.
Still, there's so much stuff.
Yes, indeed. Most of it was junk, like holey socks, worn-out sneakers, and shabby t-shirts.
You should have just thrown that stuff away.
Oh, but when I asked if I could throw things away, what did you say? It's wasteful. You always throw things away. That's what you said, right? And yet, you never wore any of it and kept buying new stuff. So I couldn't throw anything away. Do you have any complaints about that?
So you expect us to live in this tiny apartment?
Whether it's small or not, I don't know. But you wanted to live with her, right? Isn't this what you wanted?
But there's so much stuff. It's impossible to fit it all in an apartment.
Well, that's just how it is. You and Margaret chose Nancy over me.
Hey, this is too much.
The divorce is final, so this has nothing to do with me anymore. And this isn't over yet. There's more to come, so be prepared.
What? What else is there?
Chris and Margaret were shocked by my words, but I just laughed and hung up the phone. A while later, I got a frantic call from Chris. Apparently, Nancy had scolded him.
What is this? I didn't agree to you coming here suddenly.
I didn't expect this either. Stephanie sent the stuff and us here.
Then take it back.
With all this stuff? It's not that simple.
I don't care. This is an apartment. You said once Stephanie moved out, we'd live in your big house.
Yeah, but things didn't go as planned.
Why not? That house is yours, right? Just take it back.
Well, actually, it's in Stephanie's name.
What? You said it was yours.
Yeah, but things changed. I thought it would be fair to let her have the house since we're getting divorced.
You've got to be kidding. What about us? How are we supposed to live in this tiny place with all these boxes?
Yeah, it's a problem.
So we can't live in that house?
No, I guess not.
Then buy a house. If that's not possible, rent a bigger apartment right now with your salary.
No, that's not feasible.
Why are you making so much noise? This apartment is small, and yelling won't help. Given the situation, we'll have to live here.
What? Are you seriously thinking of living here? Then pay 2/3 of the rent.
Wait, why should I do that?
Obviously, we're not even married yet, and you bring Margaret here to live with us? If you're going to live here, you should pay rent based on the number of people. Also, cover the food and utility costs for everyone.
You're such a cunning woman.
Cunning? You two are trying to live here without paying anything. Most of this stuff is Margaret's, right? Do you really need all this? Isn't some of it unnecessary? I should charge you for storage. Your stuff is taking up most of the space.
I can't believe you're such a woman.
So we're not even married yet, and there's already war between my mother and her daughter-in-law-to-be. I hate going back to that apartment.
Really? Sounds like fun.
No joke. Mom hates living with Nancy, and Nancy can't stand having a mother-in-law like her. We're getting noise complaints from the neighbors because of all the fighting.
Well, I expected it to turn out this way. Even I had many moments when I wanted to scream while living with Margaret. But I endured it for Chris's sake. Now, why should I endure anything when we aren't even married?
And now there's the alimony you're demanding. What the hell is alimony? And child support too.
You cheated and caused the divorce. It's only natural you be required to pay alimony. And since I'm raising your child, it's also natural to ask for child support, right?
I can't pay that. If I pay that, I won't even be able to afford to move.
Then don't pay. If you don't, I'll hire a lawyer. But remember, it'll be even more expensive if I do. My lawyer is top-notch, and you'll also be charged for the lawyer's fees.
Why?
Because he's top-notch.
This is crazy. Please, don't ask for all that.
Chris's whining was accompanied by the sounds of Nancy and Margaret yelling at each other in the background. After that, he never paid the alimony or child support. Realizing this wouldn't work, I hired a lawyer. The lawyer, as expected, was highly skilled and demanded a lump sum for alimony and monthly child support. But then again, Chris is an irresponsible man. So, anticipating that he might not pay, we included a condition that his wages would be garnished if he missed even one payment. Of course, Nancy was also asked to pay alimony in a lump sum. This made Nancy furious, sparking yet another battle.
Why do I have to pay this?
Nancy blamed everything on Margaret for initiating contact, while Margaret argued that Nancy was at fault for becoming the mistress despite knowing Chris was married. Eventually, Nancy handed the alimony bill to Chris and kicked them both out. The two stayed in a motel for a while, but Margaret kept complaining that she couldn't rest properly. They finally managed to rent a cheap apartment, but it was next to a cemetery, which made it quite eerie. However, that's easy to say when you're not the one living there. Margaret, who stays in the apartment all day, constantly complains about how creepy it was. Even though Chris tried to calm Margaret down by saying at least they had beds, her hysteria was relentless. He couldn't relax even when he came home exhausted. In such a situation, it was impossible for anyone to maintain their sanity, and Chris eventually developed depression. He is now unable to work or even leave the house. While the lack of child support is tough, considering how he neglected Lily and me, I hope he suffers. Meanwhile, with Chris and Margaret gone, Lily and I live peacefully. Our life is undisturbed, peaceful, and happy. Divorce is truly a wonderful thing, I think to myself.